Picture this: the Grand Hall of the United Nations. World leaders, seasoned diplomats. The air thick with protocol and carefully chosen words. Then, a speaker from Malaysia takes the podium. No one in that room, or watching around the world, could have predicted what was about to happen next. It wasn't just a speech. It was a moment that would send ripples across the globe, challenging everything we thought we knew about international diplomacy. What did they say? How did one person's words manage to captivate and, dare I say, shock the entire world? Stay with me, because we're about to dissect the speech that changed everything. You see, the UN is a place of prepared statements, of diplomatic niceties. Speeches are often vetted, sanitized, and delivered with a predictable cadence. The goal is usually to maintain the status quo, not to rock the boat. But on this particular day, the Malaysian representative decided to throw the script away. They didn't just speak, they spoke from the heart, with a raw, unfiltered honesty that was both breathtaking and profoundly uncomfortable for many in the audience. So, what was the core message? It wasn't about pointing fingers or laying blame in the usual political sense. Instead, the speaker painted a vivid picture of a world seen not from the towering skyscrapers of New York or the historic halls of Geneva, but from the ground level, from the perspective of ordinary people in Southeast Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, the global majority whose voices are often drowned out in these very chambers. The speech started conventionally enough, thanking the assembly and acknowledging the chair. But then the tone shifted. The speaker began to talk about development and progress, but not in the way we're used to hearing. They questioned the very definition of these terms. Is progress just about GDP growth and stock market figures? Or is it about the well-being of our people, the health of our planet, and the preservation of our cultures? They brought up the palm oil issue, a topic often mired in controversy and oversimplification. But instead of getting defensive, the speaker did something brilliant. They framed it as a story of human struggle and aspiration. They spoke of the small-scale farmers, not multinational corporations, whose livelihoods depend on this crop. They asked the developed world a piercing question. You industrialized by clearing your forests. Now, as we try to lift our people from poverty, you impose standards that you yourselves did not have to meet. Is this justice? Or is it a new form of colonialism, cloaked in green rhetoric? The silence in the room was deafening. You could see delegates shifting in their seats. This wasn't a statistic-laden report. It was a moral challenge. It was a call for empathy, a demand for a level playing field. The speaker wasn't just defending a national interest. They were defending the right of every developing nation to choose its own path to prosperity. But the speech didn't stop there. It pivoted from economics to a much deeper, more philosophical territory. The speaker talked about the richness of cultural diversity, not as a tourist attraction, but as a repository of human wisdom. They spoke of the Malaysian concept of muhibah, a profound sense of goodwill and harmony among different races and religions living side by side. They contrasted this with the rising tides of nationalism and division seen in many parts of the world. The message was powerful and clear. While you are busy building walls, we have been building bridges for generations. Perhaps, instead of lecturing us, you have something to learn from us. This was a direct reversal of the usual dynamic at the UN. It was a small nation, a developing nation, offering wisdom to the so-called global powers. It was audacious, it was bold, and it was utterly captivating. The speaker didn't use aggressive language. In fact, their tone was calm, almost gentle. But the words themselves were like precision-guided missiles, hitting their targets with unerring accuracy. They questioned the very structure of global power. Why do a handful of nations hold veto power? Why are the institutions that govern the world's finances and trade based thousands of miles away from the people most affected by their decisions? These weren't new questions, but the way they were asked, with such sincerity and moral clarity, made them feel brand new. The speaker wasn't just representing Malaysia. They were channeling the frustrations and aspirations of billions of people. They were giving voice to the voiceless, right in the heart of the global establishment. One of the most memorable parts of the speech was a simple anecdote. The speaker recounted a story from their village about how neighbors of different faiths would share food during their respective festivals. A simple act of sharing a meal became a powerful metaphor for global cooperation. "We don't need complex treaties to understand our shared humanity," they said. "We just need to be willing to sit at the same table, break bread together, and listen. Really listen." This human touch is what made the speech so incredibly effective. It bypassed the usual political posturing and connected with people on an emotional level. It reminded everyone in that room, and everyone watching at home, that behind the flags and the titles, we are all just human beings, trying to build a better future for our children. The reaction was immediate and unprecedented. For a few moments after the speech ended, there was stunned silence. Then, a slow, hesitant applause started from a few corners of the room, swelling into a wave, a standing ovation that broke all protocol. Diplomats from Africa, Asia, and Latin America were on their feet, some with tears in their eyes. They had finally heard someone say what they had been thinking for decades. Even delegates from Western nations, the initial targets of the critique, were seen clapping. Perhaps out of respect for the sheer courage of the speaker, or perhaps because the words had genuinely struck a chord. The speech forced a moment of collective introspection that is so rare in international politics. In the days that followed, the world's media went into a frenzy. Clips of the speech went viral. Commentators and analysts who usually focus on geopolitical chess moves were suddenly talking about muhibah and the moral dimensions of global trade. The speech didn't just make headlines, it changed the conversation. It injected a new vocabulary and a new perspective into the global discourse. What was the long-term impact? It's easy to be cynical and say that one speech can't change the world. And in a way, that's true. The fundamental structures of power didn't crumble overnight. But that's missing the point. The true impact was on the minds and hearts of people. For developing nations, it was a massive injection of pride and confidence. It was a validation of their own experiences and wisdom. It encouraged other leaders to speak more boldly, to be less intimidated on the world stage. It sparked a renewed push for reform within international institutions, a push that is still gaining momentum today. For the developed world, it was a much-needed wake-up call. It forced a moment of uncomfortable self-reflection about the historical and ongoing inequalities that shape our world. It made it harder to ignore the hypocrisy inherent in some of their policies. And for all of us, it was a powerful reminder that leadership doesn't always come from the biggest or wealthiest nations. Sometimes, the most profound truths are spoken by those who are often overlooked. It was a lesson that courage, honesty, and a deep connection to one's own values can be more powerful than any army or economy. This speech from a Malaysian speaker at the UN wasn't just a political event. It was a human event. It challenged us to rethink our definitions of power, progress, and justice. It was a call to build a world based not on dominance, but on mutual respect and shared humanity. And that is a message that is more relevant today than ever before. It proved that words, when spoken with conviction and truth, truly have the power to change everything. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into a truly historic moment. If you found this as inspiring as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories that challenge the way we see the world. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of this message resonated most with you? Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.